tell us a little bit about you as a person. We know you through your music. We know your soul and your essence and your talent. But tell us a little bit about Abie Rotenberg, the father, the grandfather, the Jew. You know, you're a shy person. We don't hear from you often. Tell us a little bit about who you are, if you don't mind.
Oh boy. Oh boy. Okay, so that's a surprising question because I don't think I've ever been asked that, at least not as directly as you've done it. Let me just go back to what you said about, sharing a bit of your soul with other people when you write songs. I feel that that's true with some of my music, but a smaller portion of the music that I'm known for. When a songwriter sits down to write a tune, a melody, or to write a song, a melody to specific words or without words. So you're in the world of music. You're in the world of notes. You're in the world of tones and sounds and combining notes and how many rests and how long should the note last and should it be a quarter note or a half note? Exactly how to move the
The
words.
technical
The
aspects.
tech, well, no, that's where the neshama is. The neshama is it comes out of you and it sort of like flows from your heart, perhaps through the mind, and it comes out either from your voice if you compose without an instrument. It flows from your mind to your hands if you're playing an instrument. There is a certain element of you're bearing your soul in the song, or at least the way you interpret those words with the music that you wrote to those words, or with a song that you may later put to words, but you wrote that song, you created that piece of melody. So in the writing of the melody, there is a little piece of the composer's soul in that, and that I agree with you.
Okay.
But in the writing, when you write lyrics, or when you write a series, a children's series like the Marvelous Midos Machine, it's a much different kind of work. Yes, there's a song there at the end of the day that you put the message in, but that's much more, at least from my perspective, the role of an educator or an educational role. Certainly with the children's songs, you're sitting down, you're trying to figure out what's going to get through to them, what words are going to catch their fancy, what group of rhymes are going to be cute, make them smile, make them think. And really the same thing with most of the Journey songs. I'm trying to convey an idea, a message, something thought provoking. So that's really not as much a piece of your soul as it is a piece of your mind, a piece of your thought process, or how you view things, or how you are exposed. Yes, sometimes in the writing there can be, an expression that is meaningful and deep, but it's not only the soul. But in the music itself, I think you're right. When you craft that melody, it's coming from somewhere deep inside the person who writes it.
Okay. So,
I
so
did a good job of avoiding the
yes,
question, did I
yes,
not?
you definitely did. I was just going to say, so how many grandchildren do you have? I've heard,
I have six children, three boys, three girls, and of my children, I have two daughters who are extremely talented. They put me to shame, both of them, and I have two sons who are extremely talented as well musically, and then I have two kids who are totally, uh, I don't
on
know,
F,
what's the word, musically challenged.
musically challenged. I like that. We're musical in our house through and through. Um,
That's wonderful.
I believe when you say that your child's more talented than you, even though it's hard to imagine, but one of my daughters has like better pitch and better musical memory than me, and I borrow her mind sometimes when I'm working. Um,
Well, they got a much earlier start than I did. I really didn't start until I was about 17 when I started really to learn how to play piano, to learn how to play guitar. And I had so many friends around me who were my age who were already quite proficient in those instruments
right.
that I really felt like I was a late bloomer. And I actually started in music, simply because I was very jealous of some of the people I met in Camp Stay Chemed. Baruch Chait was there, Eli Teitelbaum was there, Yisrael Lamb, Ellie Kranzler, Ellie Birnbaum. These were all wonderful, wonderful musicians in the little small world of Jewish music
So
in
you're
those
saying
days.
from your teenage years, you wanted you recognized that your songs could be heard. You obviously, you know, were surrounded by very talented singers who were singing and performing and inspiring, and obviously that triggered?
Well, when I tried out some of my songs, in my early 20s, I started to play some of my compositions to other people who had some experience, and they resonated. And I met some of the right people. I was fortunate enough to meet Label Sharfman in yeshiva, and Baruch Chait was in the same yeshiva. So I had exposure to some people who had. Eli Teitelbaum was a friend who I grew up a block away from his house. So these were people that I knew well, and I was able to get my toe in the door, so to speak, back in the early days
Right.
because of that.
So I like that. I'm just gonna go off on a tangent here, even though I have my question set up. So you started late, but one of the things that's most admirable about you is that once you started, you hit the ground running. Like you kept writing and you kept producing and you kept performing and you became a better and better musician. I never took music lessons. I forced myself to work on that, and I don't think it gives anyone an excuse to be a poor
Well,
performer.
you should still pursue that. You're still very young. You should pursue it as much as you can. Get a teacher, get somebody who can
I
sit with
do.
you.
I attend YouTube University. I have a full scholarship.
Uh-huh. Okay.
I've learned
That's
a
wonderful.
tremendous amount. I've learned a tremendous amount of, everything online, which a lot of people do now.
Right.
So you hit the ground running, you start writing your songs, but there obviously was a time when you went from being a camper to being Abie Rotenberg. So I want to discuss a little bit about your career and, your musical stylings and your influences
Sure.
and your creative process. Um, First of all, you also are an author. You wrote a book about the Yankees. I'm a big Yankees fan. Me and my
All
husband.
right. Okay. Well, now I like you a lot more.
I'm a Floridian, but my husband's a Yankees fan. So,
Okay.
and I happen to have gone through your book. I'm not into sports
Well,
specifically, but
if you weren't sure until now, I can tell you for sure you married the right guy.
yes, I did. Everyone knows that. Baruch Hashem, you definitely need support in this business.
Yeah,
Okay.
the season of I'm holding it up.
Yes,
You
yes,
know, the season of Pepsi Myers. Yeah,
right.
for me.
Having your having a book in print is a very nice feeling. So, not everyone manages to pull that off. Okay, so you grew up at a time where in secular music, right? I imagine you were exposed to, rhythm and blues and, these organic rock bands, not the, pop stuff we have now. Um, Obviously, your style is very, folksy, and you write songs, you write story songs, you're a storyteller, you write songs for children. Um, you're definitely not like a Piamenta, but you definitely have some sort of folksy, organic rock influence in your stylings. Can you tell me, us, how much are your compositions affected by secular music? Um, Yossi Green says he doesn't even pay attention to secular music. It's a moot issue for him. It's like nothing. Like, it's just not part of the conversation. But I'm a songwriter, and I find that there are wells to draw from in secular music. And my question is, where's the boundary? Where does secular music play a role in your songwriting at all?
Well, Yossi's a good friend of mine and a little bit younger than me, but a few years younger than me. And I first met Yossi, I think I was maybe 24, 25 years old. He must have been a few years younger than me at the time. We met in LA, and I've known him for the past 40 years. And he's definitely influenced by secular music, whether he likes it or not, whether he does it consciously or subconsciously. He's been to the dentist. He's sat in the chair waiting for the guy to finish drilling his teeth, and there's music being played in the office. And yeah, he may not consciously feel that he's gone after secular music to influence him, but he certainly has been. I mean, much of his music has a very show tune kind of style to it, Broadway shows and things like that. I've heard a lot of Phantom in the Opera in Yossi's work, but you also hear the Stiebel in Yossi Green's work. You also hear the Shtetl in Yossi's work. So he's a hybrid. Everybody's a hybrid.
Well,
Everybody
the fact is,
a
we
what comes in comes out. I mean, there's
right.
no way around it. The Rebbes in Ger or their court who wrote Nigunim are writing these Polish marches. They're similar to secular classical music because that's where they lived, and that was the music being played in the street, and that's what they heard. the Romanian music from Jewish Romania. It has that klezmer feel and that gypsy feel. There's no way to avoid it. And then go to North Africa and to the Arab countries, and Jewish music it sounds so much, the way the violin wailing away, and the semitones that
Sure.
they use in there.
So much Hasidic
There's nothing.
music has that Middle Eastern influence, like this cross
Absolutely.
hybrid. On
Absolutely.
any Hasidic album, you'll find an eclectic mix of influence. Like sometimes you feel like you're in Hawaii when you're listening to like Avram Fried's album. So I
Okay.
understand. Yeah, I understand that to be true. The thing is that
I think it's totally irrelevant. I mean, and music today is certainly, much more influenced by recent
pop music,
changes, or yeah, current music. There's no question about it, and that's the way it always was.
right?
My father grew up in Europe, and he didn't even like Kalbach that much. And Kalbach is like, is almost as Jewish as you think you can get. But to him, it still was a little bit of a different sound. It wasn't the Alter Heim. It wasn't what he heard growing up. So for him, it was different, and it was hard on his ear. And Kalbach is special. I mean, I love Kalbach. My children love it. I'm sure my grandchildren will love it. He had a special space. I don't know what he had. He definitely paid somebody off. He had a special connection to the Rebbeinu Shalom. He had a special hotline to the Malachim Shamayim, and they fed him some nigunim.
And he was very determined to have his songs heard. I mean, he schlepped that guitar from kibbutz to moshav to wherever they would hear him, and he played.
Maybe that's why. Maybe that's why he merited getting having such an audience, and being the okay. David Melech Yisrael was the composer, the Meshorah for Klal Yisrael for a few thousand years, and then Shlomo Kalbach came along and picked up the slack when we needed it after the Holocaust. Music always transitions. I mean, there's always a number of years where a certain sound takes center stage, and then slowly it starts to change and shift, and the rhythms change a little bit, and music changes. But Baruch Hashem, I do have some songs that are still being sung, even though they're 30, 40 years old.
You'll have some
it,
songs. Are you kidding? I was listening to
it
your.
makes me very proud that is the case.
Yeah.
And I'm very grateful. It's a wonderful, wonderful feeling for anybody listening tonight who has aspirations to write and to work on composing. I mean, there really is no greater feeling and sense of accomplishment than walking into a wedding and hearing your song being played, or walking in the hallway of an apartment house and hearing your album being played in somebody's home. It's a wonderful feeling of gratification. Or just as a Rosh Hashiva or Rebbe will get pride out of hearing somebody say a piece of Torah from his sefer, or anybody being quoted, or anybody's paper or idea being presented to others. It's a validation of your work, and it's a wonderful feeling. So
Right. Well, you certainly have created enough music that many of us have a favorite Abie Rotenberg song. I know my favorite Abie Rotenberg song is Achenu. It's like, for me, it's the perfect Jewish song. I love it every time I play it. I love it every time I sing it. It hits all the right notes for me. Everyone has, I'm sure people will say Hamal Chagoel is their favorite song. Forget about Little Neshamala and Memories, and then the Marvelous Midas Machine, and then like the list literally goes on and on. And that's why it's so exciting to talk to you and have so many questions about specific songs as well.
Sure.
But first, I want to ask you a little bit more about your process. Can you tell us a little bit about your songwriting process, the technical part, okay? And for those of us who still believe that songwriting just a song just falls into your head in the middle of the night, beginning to end, describe some of the challenges in starting a song, completing a song, selling a song, creating a successful song regardless of the audience.
Well, thank you very much for saying before that I have a lot of songs that people enjoy, and over the years, I have a repertoire. But I can promise everybody listening that I have many, many more songs that they never heard of, that I wrote, and there's a lot of failure in this industry. But for every one success, I don't know if it's 1 in 100 or 1 to 50 or 1 to 100 or 1 to 1,000. It doesn't matter. If you have that one good song or a few good songs, it's very gratifying. but the failure rate is very high. It's not like no matter who the person. Only Shlomo had, like I said, he was an exception. And even Shlomo, you know, there are many Shlomo songs that he never recorded, and many of these songs are coming out these days. People have cassette recordings of him fiddling around on the guitar, trying something, and then saying no. And he never recorded those songs. So he also has had. Today we resurrect those songs and put words to them and say, wow, the hidden missing Shlomo songs that are better than anything anybody's writing these days. But he didn't feel it was ready to be recorded. So everybody had and has failures. That's important to know. Look, I have a daughter who's very talented artistically. I cannot draw a straight line. I am simply like all left hands when it comes to art.
I
I
would say
don't
I'm visual.
understand it. I have no understanding of perspective. I can't figure out how the heck you put together a few lines and all of a sudden the picture comes together. It is something I am the biggest Amaret's about. So it's very hard for me to tell somebody who might not have musical talent to how to sit and write a tune. I mean, I think somebody who has musical talent and either can play or not necessarily have to play, but who can sit, can put notes together, can sing and carry a tune, understands how to harmonize. Somebody who has that elementary talent can write a song.
Right,
Just start, take
right.
note number one, then go to another note, and then go to a third note and do it at a certain measure, a certain meter, a certain speed.
Because I hear a lot of people's attempts at writing songs when people want an arrangement or want my opinion. And a lot of times the songs are not that original because they tend to be a little bit, I don't want to use the word, but it's a little bit lazy. Like you really have to, break boundaries in order to create and think out of the box and do something original and different. And, obviously that's creativity and inspiration. And those are things that you also have to have what's the word? A zeal for.
I had a friend who also liked to write songs, and he met, this is 25, 30 years ago, he bumped into Paul Simon from Simon and Garfunkel in a hotel. And he ran over to him and he handed him a cassette. He said, I want you to listen to these songs. I think they're very much your style. And Paul Simon says, I never listen to anybody else's music. I do not want to be ever told that I plagiarize somebody else's music. So innocently, somebody can write a song and it could be similar to somebody else's, and that's fine. But again, if a person writes a song and sees for himself or herself that it sounds a lot like something else, well, you got to move in another direction. I had at least 10 different versions of the high part to Hamalach. The low part, I wrote it in one sitting. It was done to those words. But V'Shem Avoisai, V'Shem Avoisai, that part, I had 10 different versions. And the only reason I picked the version that I picked was because we were going to the studio that day to record. So I had to choose one. I had, time was up, and Baruch Hashem, the one I chose became popular. And maybe had I chosen a different one, it never would have gone anywhere. I don't know.
Could you sing one for us now, a different variation?
Oh my gosh, this is so long ago. But I have them on cassette somewhere in the basement. There's a room filled with old cassettes that.
But I just want to finish up with this, because for me, this is particularly interesting because I sit by the piano and I create songs where there were none. The song Little Neshamala, okay? It's not a regular song. It's not like all the other songs. Everything's up for debate, but I think we can all agree that Little Neshamala is a song that every single person who's ever listened to it, who was born or has a soul, connected to.
Well, that's anybody who listened to it has a soul and was born.
Exactly. It's like the most relatable song in the whole world. Like it's genius. And not only that, the way you sung it at the time, you had Mordechai and David. It was a conversation back and forth. It's just a very, very perfect song. And not all of us can write Little Neshamala. And, there's only one.
I'll tell you the story behind that song.
Please, people want to know. Tell us everything.
So I would say the first 10 years of my adult life, I was in chinuch. I was an educator. I taught in a yeshiva high school or Jewish high school in California. And I moved to Toronto in 1984. I was in 1984, that's when I came out with the first Journeys album. But in 1986, I think that's when Journeys 2 came out. So sometime in 1986, one of our students from high school, I was no longer there, but she was a student in the girls' school. We had a boys' school and a girls' school, and a student in the girls' school passed away. And it was a girl who used to be a bas bayis by us. She used to come over very often, and she missed a lot of school. She had I don't want to mention the name or the particular a medical issue that she had, but she had a medical issue that um, I personally didn't think it was as serious as it turned out to be, of course. And I always felt that she took advantage of her condition, missed a lot of school because of it, and took advantage of it. Anyway, I moved to Toronto, and a year later, we heard the terrible news that she'd passed away, and I felt terrible about how I always felt about her, that I harbored this suspicion that she was um, abusing her problem, and I also was obviously very saddened to hear of her tear. She was very close to our family, and she was in her senior year when we left. We stayed in touch. My wife especially was close with her, and it was a very big shock when she passed away. And it was a sudden kind of thing, but it was a result of her medical issue. And I wrote Neshamla that night. I wrote the entire song, and I thought about life, and I thought about the meaning of life, and the origin of life, and where we go. And I was in a very fragile mood that night. And I think it's one of the songs that just went. The Place Where I Belong is another song. I wrote it on one night. A song like Memories, I worked on it for at least 5 years before I came out with it. So there's no one answer. A song can go quickly, it can flow. Who Am I wrote in one night. But many songs, and songs that I'm working on now, are taking a very, very long time to fine tune and to make sure that the words are right. And there are so many phrases and words and lyrics that I wish I could take back and change and improve and make better. As good as they are, there's always room for improvement, and there's always so I do have regrets about some of the things I've written, and I wish I could take them back. But again, folks, once you record it,
we have no
once
regrets.
you put it down,
we have no regrets. We have no regrets about your songs. My husband's calling. What's up? We just spoke about Little Neshamla. Okay. My husband's working.
I see he shares your schedule.
Okay, so one second. So first of all, yes, this is true that some songs come in 1 minute. I wrote I Daven, a very popular song of mine, in one sitting, and I wrote a song called Razel Song about my cousin Razel, who passed away last year, also in one sitting, and both of them just came out, and they were both perfect. And then there's songs, obviously, that are not so perfect, or that we could have done better, whatever. But like I said, we have no regrets.
I didn't say. I think Memories is as good a song as I've ever written, but it took a long time to get there. So I don't think perfection necessarily comes from speed, but it does mean something if it goes seamlessly and quickly. But I think you can get there. I'll take the high road, you take the low road, but we'll both get there. But sometimes to get there takes a lot of time. Doesn't mean you didn't get there.
Right. Many of the songs, just now in your career at this point, do you write songs for other people? Like, are there Abie Rotenberg songs that other people sing that we don't know about, or do we have?
Well, I am working on a 5th Journeys album. I've been working on it for the past. Well, I guess you could say I've been working on it since the last Journeys album, but I'm working on it much more actively now.
Can you give us a preview, like not a singing preview, but maybe some of the songs, the topics, like
Sure.
Is there a song about President Trump or no?
It'll be about 10 or 11 songs. Right now I have 3 songs that are connected somehow to the Holocaust. And I don't know, I just think like we've got, the window is closing very quickly. There are very few survivors left these days. Anyway, one song is peripheral to the Holocaust. One song is absolutely meat and potatoes Holocaust. And another one is about the aftermath of the Holocaust. So 3 perspectives on the Holocaust. some upbeat songs, some interesting, cute ideas, and regular mishmash of ballads and inspirational thoughts and stuff that will get people talking, hopefully, and thinking, and possibly
Are you playing
and
on it?
I haven't played on an album in a long time. I mean, today the music and the production values are so high, and I'll sing on it a little bit, but I hope to get a whole bunch of really great singers to come in and do parts, and it should be a lot of fun. But I'm hoping maybe as early as Hanukkah.
When you tune in to what's being created by our musicians now and our singers now and our songwriters now, how do you feel the state of Jewish music is? Do you feel like music is coming from the right places? Do you think people are giving it their all? Do you see incredible talent? Are you disappointed? Tell us a little bit about what you're sensing as far as today's Jewish music, because a lot of people watching here create music, write music, produce it, sing it. Like, we want to know.
Very, very good question. I have to be careful what I say. Obviously, I'm very, very friendly.
No, this is the Chanale show. You don't have to be careful. You can say whatever you want.
I'll tell you the truth. I'll tell you exactly how I feel. First of all, I've been fortunate. I have to thank Hashem. I've been very fortunate that music was never my parnasa. Music was never my occupation. It didn't put food on the table for me. I had a job either as a teacher. Later, when I moved to Toronto, I got into business. We opened up a family business that Baruch Hashem did well. So I never had to go and perform or write or come out with an album because I had a deadline and I needed to get it out there because I needed the money. So that for me was a very, very helpful blessing from Hashem. And I was able to say, that album's not ready yet. That song's not ready. I'm not going to record it yet. I need more time. And many performers today really don't have that luxury. They want to be out there. They want to be in the forefront. They want to command top dollar for the gigs that they get, whether it's a concert or a bar mitzvah or a wedding or whatever it is. So they need to come out with new material. So there's a little bit of pressure on them, and that will affect to some extent the quality, because it's a little bit more of a
commercial.
I mean, even in the olden days, when people needed the album sales for parnasa, today it's not so much that. Today, people come out with the albums, it's more for the advertisement. So I feel very fortunate that I never had to do that. I could take my time, and like I said, the last Journeys album was in 2005. It's like over 15 years, and I'm really not in a rush to do this one.
Unless we're in a rush. We're waiting for it, so get it done.
Well, thank you for saying that. Unless I'm ready, and Mitzvah Hashem, I will be this year. I hope so. But that's one thing. But there's another thing that I think is very, very true. I think Jewish music has become much less. I really don't know how to say this in a sophisticated way. I think Jewish music has become less sad. I think Jewish music has become much
less poignant,
less sad, less emotion. I think it's become much more. Jewish music was always very, very filled with pain, filled with ache, filled with longing for Mashiach. The Jews, I mean, we know we're the wandering Jews. We suffered since the Golas. I'm sure the music in the Beis Hamikdash that the Leviim sang in the days of Shlomo HaMelech, when the Jewish nation was on top of the world, I'm sure it was very happy music. Right. I'm sure it was glorious, orchestral, majestic, the Viennese boys choir, whatever is times 1,000. But when we were, sent from that land and strewn across the four corners of the earth and struggling in every society that we lived in, and going from the expulsion from Spain to the massacres in Europe, to the Holocaust. I mean, the struggle and the poverty, there's tremendous amount of pain and suffering. But
also one of the girls' messages that wrote in the chat now, also full of hope, because your song Memories is full of pain. You can't listen to that song without crying, but then you change the trajectory of the song at the end, and you describe how, through the grandson, we won't forget. And that's like that hopeful aspect.
yeah, so the Ani Mamin songs are filled with pain, but at the same time, achake, I'm going to wait. And we're not going to give up, and we're going to stick it out. And look, we are the descendants of Rabbi Akiva, who was willing to give his life for Hashem, and we'll do that. All I'm saying is that Jewish music, as a general rule, was filled. Yes, there's a song here or there, song there that's very happy. But I'll tell you, even a lot of the fast songs, the European fast songs, are filled with pain. If you slow down the song, great fast song, right? Just slow it down. So my parents, went through the war. My uncles and aunts went through the war. I did not have grandparents like most of the kids in my class. I mean, we are, the shul where I davened at, you had people with, the sunken eyes, and you could see that they'd been through so much pain. And the nigunim they sang were filled with European pain, and that's the music I grew up with. At the same time, I'm listening on the radio to Peter, Paul, and Mary, and Simon and Garfunkel, and the Beatles, and all this, happy stuff. And in my own personal life, I'm watching the Yankees on TV, and I'm, buying baseball cards and playing ball, so.
Your music has that very.
It was a mix. It was a mix of pain and happiness in my life, and maybe my music reflects that. But
that's
today's
why American
artists,
Jews love your music. American Jews connected to your music because it sounded very American, and it was
American, but there was still some residue from the previous generation. And
right.
And as we get further and further away from Europe, and we were established in the United States and in Eretz Yisrael, and there's this. Again, I can't speak for Eretz Yisrael. They go through, they've struggled a lot in many, many ways. But certainly on our side of the pond, there's just, a disconnect between our European past, and that's that struggle. So it doesn't make you Jewish music any less good or any less
right.
authentic or any. It's different because we're living in different times. We're living
I also think every generation needs something else. Like the song "Thank You Hashem," it's such a basic song, but it's one of those songs that everybody just needs to have in their, in their musical library, because that's what people want to be saying. And gratitude is something that is very emphasized in today's day and age. And then, Chayla Newhouse just wrote a beautiful song called "The Yid" about coronavirus. And it's a song that moves people because coronavirus, even though the whole world experienced it, as Yidden, we sing our pain, and we weren't in shul, and we weren't able to be together, and our simchas were affected, and we lost, tremendous tzaddikim in the last year. So when someone writes a song like that everybody can listen to and connect with, that's what makes a song, a success, because it hits all the right notes at the right time.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I really can't judge. I am influenced as well. I don't really listen to Jewish music. I don't go out and listen to new albums or the work of people, but I do go to weddings, and I do hear songs that are being played. And if I hear a song often enough and it's nice, I'll try to learn it, and I'll remember it. And I hear a lot of wonderful songs and wonderful tunes, slow, fast, interesting. And like I said, music is always going to evolve. There's nothing you can do to stop it. You can't. It's like a torrential river. It moves, it goes down, and it changes, from generation to generation. And that's what's going to happen. And what our children are listening to, their grandchildren aren't going to want to listen to. It's inevitable. It's just inevitable.
Right. And every generation thinks, what are they going to possibly come up with next? And then something awesome happens. Let me ask you, let's just lighten the mood for a second. I want to ask, I'm going to throw out a couple of descriptions, and I want you to tell me which song connects to that description for you in your library, I'm just, I'm curious as a songwriter, how you feel about certain songs of yours. And, we know how we feel, but we want to know how you feel. Out of all, I know we'll start with the toughest one. Out of all your songs, which one of your songs is your least favorite?
My least favorite song?
That was released, that maybe you cringe every time you hear it, or you don't love it, or, there's an issue.
I never was asked that question before. So that's the second question I was never asked before.
There's more.
I will have to do this again a year from now. I'll have an answer for you by then.
Did anyone ever ask you why you live in Toronto? And not in Eretz
My wife is from Toronto, and I love the city. I'm now a Canadian citizen as well as an American citizen. I have dual citizenship. I love it. It's very peaceful. It's quiet. It's a beautiful Jewish community here, and a lot of friends, and my children grow up here, and if anybody's listening tonight from Toronto, I'm sure they share that feeling. It's just a great place.
It's a beautiful
Wonderful.
city. Yeah, it's a beautiful city.
Yeah,
I lived in
and
Montreal for a few
we
years.
do find parking near our homes.
And
We don't have to double park in front
there's
of a
no Labor
store.
Day parade in Toronto. Okay, but one second. What is, Taka, your so you don't, do you not have a least favorite song? Could
I
you?
never thought of it. I probably have like 50 songs that I'm not crazy about. And I said, what was he thinking? What was Rotenberg thinking when he released that song? Why'd you do that? But at the moment, at the time, it struck me a certain way. And like I said, I'm so fortunate and thankful that there are enough songs out there that people like. And yeah, so if I said before it's 1 out of 100, it's 1 out of 100 of songs that you compose, but maybe it's 1 out of 10 of songs that you publish, right? In other
Right.
words, you can publish songs and they won't be, from the best. So
Someone
that's the way
commented, which song, asking which song he doesn't like is like asking which child you don't like. I have a favorite child. These are just easier than others.
Okay, well, that's a line I heard. It was written in the name of Benzion Schenker. They asked him which song it was his favorite. And he answered that you can't ask me that because it's like asking me who my favorite child is. If people ask me what my favorite song is, I usually answer them, I hope I haven't written it yet. That's what I say.
Okay, but that's a cop out because you're gonna have to choose something that you did write. The next song, which song in your career was the hardest to write? Not necessarily the longest, but the hardest
So
song.
I think it was Memories. I think that was the hardest song to write. How do you approach the Holocaust? How do you write about something like that, a tragedy like that? How do you write it in a way that's not going to be meaningless or upsetting to those people who went through it? It's just a difficult task. I think that was the hardest song to write. And many people misunderstand the song. Many people think I'm writing what will become of all the memories. If we don't remember the Holocaust, what will become of. I'm not writing to people. This is not a song about Holocaust remembrance. It's not a song urging people never to forget what happened. It's not what is it, the slogan, never forget. That's not the message of the song.
What is it?
Those memories are gone. In this world, in Olam Hazeh, in this world, this temporal world that we live in, those memories are gone. There may be 750,000 children who died in the Holocaust that no pictures of them remain on this earth. There is no photograph. You can go to Yad Vashem and see hundreds of thousands of photographs of children, but I would venture to say that 3/4 of the children that died in the Holocaust, there's no
We'll never
picture
see
of
their
them.
faces. I just want to interrupt
There's
you for 1
no
second.
way, no one sees their face. What will become of those memories? Those memories don't exist on it. We can say we remember all we want. We could say, oh, I'll never forget the Holocaust. I'll study it. I'll learn all about it. You're not going to remember who. You're not going to remember a name. You're not going to remember this person's child, that person's child. What will become of all those memories? Are they gone? Are they gone forever? And the only answer is that they're well protected in the in the drawer somewhere up in Shamayim. HaKadosh Baruch Hu has those neshamas, tucked away, safe and sound. So that was a difficult song to write and to go through the process of how to say it and what to say.
I just want to interrupt you for 1 second. Your camera's shaking. I don't know if it's because you're moving your desk.
It could be.
Yeah, so just be aware of that.
Okay.
My grandmother's a Holocaust survivor, and she had a tragic story, and she's alive today till 120 and suffers from nightmares and flashbacks till now. So there's no question that anyone who had anything to do, with a family member that was connected to the Holocaust related to that song. And sometimes when a song means so much to people, maybe there's a little bit of spiritual tension before it's, released into the universe. Okay, next one. Which, you said some songs just flow. Which one of your songs?
I can tell you the hardest song that I ever had to work with in a studio to produce. The hardest song for me to produce was, I think, on Journeys 3, Yerushalayim. Yerushalayim, the place to live.
That song runs in my head all the time.
That song, I went like it was the most difficult because we went from one voice to another voice to a choir to a group to a soloist, back and forth, and there's so many parts, and just especially in those days. Today with the digital recording would be much easier to do,
Right.
But in those days with analog recording, it was just, I remember, a nightmare in the studio. And just, I remember I never worked so hard on a song in my life. So that was a memorable day coming home
It's
from that.
interesting
And
because I watched some of your performances on YouTube. I'm a songwriter that's also a performer. Like I love the spotlight, but I get the feeling that you don't necessarily need to be in the spotlight. You sing your songs because they're your songs and you have a beautiful voice. But I don't get the feeling like you got into this because you wanted the attention. I feel like you really are, I mean, I could be wrong, but I feel like you really are.
no, you probably could tell if you see my performances on YouTube. You'll see that it's probably the last place I want to be
Yeah,
is
that's
where
what
I
I'm
am. You know.
saying. That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. Like you don't need the spotlight. You are a more private, less flamboyant songwriter. You know, Elton John is a songwriter, and Lord knows he needs the spotlight. So that's an interesting character trait of yours that I find, for me, as somebody who's a little bit more out there, interesting. You know, I don't think there's one character trait of a songwriter. Like you said, there's no rules. There's all different types. Um, but it's nice to have this conversation with you because we don't hear from you a lot. You know, you don't. You know, we hear from you through your music.
Well, in my early albums, on the early albums that were the Dvekas albums. So in the first, my first exposure was really as a composer and an arranger. I wrote the arrangements back in 1972. The album came out in 1973. Label Sharfman did most of the singing, and then Yossi Sonnenblick joined, and Ellie Kranzler and Rivi Schwabel. And I only sang very select parts and did a little bit of harmony. I never really sang. And I never looked at myself as being a vocalist, but as a composer and an arranger. And later, when I started writing songs in English, I did not write my first song in English until I was 32 years old. So again, anybody out there who's young and feels that, oh, I'm already 24 years old, I'm over the hill, I'm forget it, I'm over rebuttal, you know, I wrote It's Time to Say Good Shabbos. I was 32 years old.
Good song. That was
And,
your
and
first
I
English
wrote it,
song.
that was my first song in English.
Such a good song.
Yeah, it's a good song. And I wrote it within a few weeks of hearing the Magama album. The Magama album came out then as well in the early '80s, and I had never heard it. I had heard of Moshe Yes and Chaim Levine, and then I got a hold of the album and I heard My Zaidi, and it blew me away. And I said, "Wow, this is what writing, real writing and real English music or folk music or country music, but can be." And it motivated me to try my hand at it. But in the early days, I really didn't look at myself as a vocalist. But then I became so close and so attached to
Your
to
material.
to the Journeys material. I started singing. I sang Little Kite for myself. I didn't want to give it to anybody. I didn't know of anybody who could maybe really understand what I wanted in terms of the feeling and the emotion of the
Right.
song. I used other people as well, and I squeezed them very hard, and I worked them very hard, and I got mostly what I wanted out of them. Mordechai Ben David on Neshamala
Are you?
it was not Mordechai's comfort zone. I asked him to sing a little bit different than he usually sings, to
Right.
tone it down, to sing the words a little more clearly, not to over emote and things like that. So these were challenges, but
Did you sing?
so
Did
I
you
never
do the
looked at
vocals?
myself as a vocalist. That's
Did
all
you
I'm
do the
saying.
vocalist for I'm a Hippopotamus?
That was Moshe. Moshe, yes.
Okay. Right. So Moshe Yes, obviously, if you grew up listening to Midas Machine, you knew Moshe Yes, and he wrote my song, My Zaidi, that everyone knows. I actually
My Zadie, David Cohen's Bar Mitzvah Day, Prayer Book Blues,
Miami Boys
Dollar
Choir.
Bill,
It was amazing.
song after song after
Yeah.
song of
Also,
great writing and great lyrics. He was a great lyricist too, and he matched his music with his lyrics. He was great.
he was
I'll tell
brilliant.
you a little story. So Moshe and I did the first Marvelous Midos Machine together, and we recorded most of it in his basement. He was living in Toronto in 1986, and so um, we did the songs, and we finally had the album together. And we brought in Moshe had two children. I don't remember. I remember. I think the oldest one was Tali. Then he had another brother. Tali has a younger brother, and we sat them down on a couch and we played them the album. I don't know if Tali was 7 or 6 or 8, and the other one was 5 or 4. But there were two boys. The demographic that we were trying to reach with this album, and we played the album, and they're sitting there and they're listening, and it's this and Dr. Doomstein, and they're laughing at the jokes, and we were so delighted, like everything we wanted to happen was happening. Then we got up to the piece about shalom, so, and we have the song going, shalom is peace, and
Great
that's when they started fighting. The two kids, you know, sitting on the couch, they ran out of patience, they started fighting. So we got a good lesson in humility, you know, and humble pie. Don't think it's going to change me, those. Maybe it'll teach kids a little bit about me, those. Maybe
Oh,
it'll
the
be something to strive for.
Midas Machine produced some of the greatest songs. I mean, I Am an Ancient Wall of Stone. The fact that that's even on the Midas Machine is like crazy. And then, I mean, Who Spilled the Milk on the Kitchen Floor? I can't even tell you how many times we listened to that as kids.
Yeah.
And also, you could just see that it was a passion project. You could just see that you were fully invested in and emotionally there in the album, and that I think really makes it, you know, till today.
Yeah, that was
to it.
looking back. That was like a wonderful time in my life. I was teaching in the morning. I gave a class in the morning, and then every day after mincha, I would come back. And it was up north. I would drive south. I would stop off at Moshe's house. We would work like from 2 to 5 every single day for an entire winter, writing the script, writing the songs, having a great time. You know, he had his guitar down there. He had his recording equipment, and it was just and we bonded. We got to know each other very well, and at the same time, you know, he sang the Ninth Man for me on the first Journeys album. Was in that same period of time, and Pesach Blues, and it's just a wonderful a good 5 or 6 year period where we were very close, and I miss him a lot. I
want
miss
to
him a lot.
add, yeah, he was, yeah. I remember him from Miami Boys Choir, the Miami Experience. I just want to ask you a few more small things before we maybe open the forum to other people. You know,
Sure.
we only have enough Sitzfleisch for, you know, so many Zooms in a day. Your most successful song, I would say, okay, is Little Neshamala. And I made successful that it's just more people know it than any other song. It speaks to more people. It's just the song. It's just the song. So I'm going to skip asking you which song is the most successful, unless you could tell me a different one. But my question,
it's not for me to say. I have no idea. I don't know. I don't have numbers. I can't tell you.
Right. Okay. So we'll I guess we'll leave that up to the audience to decide. I think it's Little Neshamala. Have you ever had a song that you put out that was critiqued? Now, I just want to preface this by saying that I have very strong opinions about Jewish music, which I don't share on my social media page. I love to talk about music. I'm selling a masterclass that encourages performers to practice more, be better, perform, prepare, do a great job on stage. So obviously I'm discerning and could be even critical of Jewish music or music in general. But, everybody makes mistakes, and everybody, produces maybe songs that are not so amazing. But I feel like in the frum world, we're not allowed to criticize. We're not allowed to have a Rolling Stone magazine where we take an album apart and say, you know what, this is trash. Have you had songs that were critiqued, or you got maybe a negative feedback about? Maybe it was, on a
Sure,
lyric.
of course I have, but I do agree that it's not our place to say negative things about. Not forget about Jewish music. I mean, if you went to a restaurant and you didn't like the service or the food, I mean, you're not going to put it up on a blog and tell everybody else about it, right?
And
so the same thing.
That's what you do on Zagat. You
Okay,
literally do exactly that.
Okay, but I would assume that's not something you would want to do, because that's not our way. You don't obviously, you don't have to say something nice about it. You're not going to lie. And if your mother asks you, should I go there? You shrug your shoulders, that kind of thing. But sure, I've had direct people criticize this song. They say I stole from here, or that idea is not original, or if a kid breaks a leg sliding into third, they're not going to forfeit because they don't have 9 people on the team. They'll keep playing with 8 people. So how did you write the Ninth Man song and saying that's a forfeit if you lose? And how did the Rebbe get up to hit? He's an adult playing with children. What kind of Rebbe is that? So you have certain criticisms that people will have, and the answer, of course, is that there is such a thing as poetic license, and you have room to fantasize a little bit, and nobody should take it that seriously. I remember getting a letter from a child, a 10-year-old child wrote me a letter after the third Marvelous Midos machine came out. And I'll remind the audience, the story is about going back in time. So Snooki and Dr. Midos go back in time and they meet George Washington and Christopher Columbus and this
Yes,
and that.
yes, I remember that very
We
clearly.
had a theological problem with that concept because
Okay.
only HaKadosh Baruch Hu is Haya, Hove, V'yiyah, was, is, and will be. Time travel is in the realm of God, and nobody else, no human being could possibly go through time. And it's impossible for Dr. Midos to have invented such a machine. So at the end of the story, we have Snooki waking up from a dream. So the whole thing was a dream, and the whole tape was a dream in which he thought he went back in time, but it really was not a
like the popcorn machine just spilling all over the place.
No, that was real. That was the Marvelous and the Kvitza said. Well, anyway, a kid writes me a letter and saying he loves the albums. He loved the first album, the second album, but he's so angry at me and the third album because it was a dream.
It's like you never win.
He was angry at me because I wrote the child back, and I, very respectfully, and I thanked him for his, for being a fan and all this. But I said, please, I want you to know that even the Kfitzas Haderech machine and the satellites, those were also not real. Not just the story within a story. He was so upset that within this fantasy, the story in the fantasy was not real. So there's always a perspective that you can't anticipate. And listen, we say, Ein tzaddik ba'aretz asher yaseh tov v'lo yechta. There's no such thing as being righteous, doing good, and not erring, not making mistakes. But if you sit home and you don't do anything with your life and you hide within your own little cubicle, you could be a tzaddik who never sins. Asher yaseh tov v'lo yechta. If you do good, if you go out and you're active and you create and you write and you produce things, you write a sefer, you interact with people, then you're going to stumble. You're going to make mistakes. We all make mistakes. Right. But it shouldn't hold anybody back. It shouldn't hold anybody back from going out and doing their best.
I think that's very good advice. I think that's really good advice. Wonderful. I love that.
A little bit of thick skin. We talk a lot about talent. People have talent. I put a lot of time, a lot of effort. Maybe when it comes to coming up with a tune or with a melody, I have a natural talent. I have a certain ability to hear a tune and maybe write something original or feel what people will enjoy. But in the writing of lyrics and messages and stories and ballads, it's not easy. It doesn't come easy. It's not a question. Oh, I did mention that a few songs I wrote but really it's a lot of hard work. It's 90% perspiration and 10% inspiration. Anybody who thinks that they're going to be a successful songwriter or lyricist or both without putting in the time, putting in the work, it's just not going to happen. You have to put in the work. You have to hazorim bedima barina. So and you'll be so happy later. You'll feel such elation and such sense of accomplishment when you come out with something good because of all that work. When things come too easy, the reward is not so great either. The 100%. Sense of accomplishment isn't there.
I'm gonna lead what you're saying right into a question by Shandy Klotzker, because Shandy is a very popular Jewish singer, female singer, and she sings and performs beautifully. She wants to ask you a question, and she's definitely somebody who puts the work in and strives for excellence. And I think that's what sets the amateur and the professional apart. So Shandy, the floor is all yours.
Thank you, Chanale. Hi. Firstly, it's really a schus. I want to thank you firstly because your music, as I'm sure you know, really has such an impact globally. I see it as a teacher. I run actually a program in my school for the past 6 years based on the Marvelous Midos machine. And every week there's a different mida, a different song, and the girls really, really, they take it all in, and it's been running for a bunch of years now. And I want to thank you because I see the impact that it has on them. And on the flip side, as a singer, because I have two completely different audiences, the children and then the teenagers and adults, I see the impact as well that your music in general has on every type of audience. And I think that's incredible, whether it's the teenagers or the grandmothers. it really gets to everybody, and it tells such a story. And to me as well, it's really an inspiration. So firstly, thank you. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you for saying that.
I actually know your daughter, Robertson Levitan, very well. She's a very special person. I actually performed with her last year.
Wow.
So they're really, really special, and she's very talented herself. I honestly have way too many questions to ask, right now. So my general question would be, what if you could just give one piece of advice in general about music, songwriting, what would be your one thing that you would tell to me, to the audience, to everybody that's in this business? I'm actually pretty new to the business. I've been doing a lot behind the scenes songwriting and everything for a while behind the scenes. I only went public recently. So on just every aspect, I would just appreciate your general advice.
So, I mean, let's talk about writing a good lyric. Okay, writing a good lyric. So, or good ballad. Let's say somebody wants to write a nice ballad, take a story and turn it into a song. So obviously there has to be an interesting story. It has to be something that when you heard that story, your eyes picked up and said, wow, that's such an interesting, and there are different layers to what it teaches. And so you can take that story, and you don't have to go that same night and sit down with a piece of paper and start writing, but let that story percolate in your mind. Think about it. Remind yourself of it. Maybe write it down and leave it on a piece of paper on a desk where you're going to see it from time to time and remind you. And you just never know that down the road, at some point in time, a line will come into your head because it's there, because it's something you're thinking about. A line will come into your head that, wow, that's a songwriting line. That's a line for a song. That's a nice catchphrase. It's not a cliche. But it's a nice original line that works and tells part of that story. So you start to build the song. You don't have to force yourself. You don't have to feel pressure. You don't have to give yourself a timeline or a time. Just think about that story. Think about that ballad, and maybe all of a sudden your brain is going to start coming up with some lines and some words. And then once you have a little bit of maybe it's the key line at the end of the chorus that you want to say. So you start to build it backwards, and you use, you find other rhymes, and you find other ways to tie those themes in together. So that's just a lyric trick that I have. If I hear a good story, I don't rush to write a song about it right away necessarily, but this album, there's a story on this album that I heard many, many years ago, but I finally got the angle to it. I finally figured out how to write it, turn that story into a song, into a ballad. So
that's incredible.
That's one little trick you can try.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Shandy. Chaya Newhouse, she's a prolific songwriter. We're going to wrap this up in a few minutes because in 10 minutes, my children have to get up to go to school here in Israel. First of all, thank you so much. This was such an interesting conversation. It was as wonderful as I thought it would be. I could talk about music for hours. So, thank you for obliging or for honoring us with this conversation. I really am proud that we have a very beautiful, strong female community in Jewish music that's achieving and writing and performing beautiful things. And B, that we have so many wonderful role models like you and Yossi Green and others that are willing to come out here and communicate with us, based on your experience, how we can be better songwriters, how we can be better performers, how we can be more productive in our, creative aspirations. Oh, you go ahead. Yes, go ahead.
Really quick. First of all, thank you so much. It's really an honor, and I'm so grateful that I got to listen in on this. My question is, in terms of as a songwriter, when we have a message and it's all about the message, but obviously then there's the packaging. And if we can't package it in a way that people will stick around and listen to what we have to say, then, the message is not going to be heard. And I sometimes find that I have what to say, but it's just not fitting into that commercial space of 3.5 minutes. And I end up having to make concessions to get the song to that publishing point. And I'm curious if you feel like that's always worthy, or if sometimes you could just put your foot down and say, I know this isn't perfectly commercial, but this is how I want this message delivered. And I know that other artists who I work with on this Zoom can relate to that feeling of, I know it's not commercial, but just this is how I want to tell it. And this is how I want it to be heard. I'm wondering what your take is on that.
So I mentioned before that I thank Hashem. I feel very fortunate that I never had to produce a song or record a song or do anything on an album because of the money. I did not really have to do that. Certainly not. Maybe in the early years in Vegas, we wanted to make our money back, but even there, I don't think money was ever a consideration. So I was able to. I remember when the second song on the first Journeys album is "The Place Where I Belong." It's a 7.5-minute song. In those days, there was no such thing as a 7.5-minute song. And I remember when I met Nachum Siegel after the album came out, he gives me a big hug. He said, "The place where I belong, I love it." He says, I get to go to the bathroom, because of that song. He put it on and then he could go to the washroom. So, I didn't care. I have to tell the story. I have to tell the whole story of the place, the Sefer Torah from Kiev, and it needed 7.5 minutes. So put it in. So if you can, and this is what you want to say, and this is how you want to tell it, do it. But again, if you have a producer and you have an audience, or you have time limits, and because of financial reasons, then you have to take them into consideration. But if you are able to, I remember I sang on an album once with some other chevra that was produced by somebody else. I think it was produced by Ding or Shia Mendelowitz, one of these, and they asked me to sing a little piece on it. I remember them saying certain things that I know I would have done differently, but they were producing it and they had their production guidelines and deadlines, and so if that is the overwhelming consideration, you have no choice. But if you can stay true to your art, you'll always feel better about it later. And even if it doesn't succeed, at least you'll say, I gave it my best shot. It's the way I wanted it to be.
Thank you so much. That's a great message.
Yeah. Look, I always say, we talk about Jewish music. Everybody wants to write hits, but it's not. I say it's not how hot it is when it comes out of the oven. It's how long it stays warm. So you can write a song that maybe it's got a knetch to it, it's got a nice rhythm, it's got something fancy and nice and this and that, and it hits the ground running, but it runs out of gas. A month later, nobody knows the song. And so put your heart and soul into everything you do, and you'll see. Hopefully you'll have siyata d'shmaya and be successful with it. I do have a critique on today's music, in I think you mentioned it briefly before, and you have musicians today who are extremely well trained, and they know how to take a song and put in the minor diminished and the sevenths and the sixths and the ninths and this and that, and they can take chords and put incredible progressions, but very often doing that you lose the soul of the song. I remember in the 80s, they came out with a series of Kalbach tapes. He was still alive then, and he authorized the people to use his songs, but they got a secular arranger, and the secular arranger did exactly that. He looked for chords that would be creative and different, and I could not listen to those albums. To me, that wasn't a Shlomo Kal. Shlomo Kal played A minor, D minor, A minor, D minor, E major back then, and it had a neshama. And all of a sudden, you put in these chords and you start doing progressions within the song. It took the neshama, it took the hearts, it took the Yiddishkeit out of the song. So it's not necessarily the best thing. And then again, I've learned a lot in the last 20, 30 years about chords, and very often the right chord in the right place can make the difference.
Right.
Can make the difference between a great song and a good song, or not so good song and a good song. You have to be careful. You have to be very, very careful.
All right, Bracha Jaffe, a friend of mine, also a female singer. She's extremely talented. She has a very large audience. She asks very good questions. She's coming to you from New York. She wants to ask you something. So go ahead, Bracha.
Sure.
Okay, just a really quick question, because one interesting thing that first of all, thank you so much for this. It really, really, as everyone's saying, was so interesting. And I really do appreciate the time that you gave us tonight. And thank you for Chanale for arranging this, because really special. So
Yes.
kudos to you. One very interesting thing that you've said, and you said it twice now, is that you didn't have to rely on the music aspect of your life, bringing in your parnasa, and you had a good parnasa coming from the side. I have a question about that, because so I find that amazing. Baruch Hashem, I have a day job. I'm a nurse practitioner, and I work, pretty full time. And then I teach music on the side. But the music to me has always like been a side thing, even though to the public, it may look very much full time. But I sort of see it as a black and white cookie, it sort of complements each other. And I think that one side of me is complemented by the other side. But recently I've been getting told by many people that I need to quit my day job, because if I dive full into the music, doors will open more, there will be more opportunities, it'll become greater. Do you ever feel that, the fact that you weren't fully invested in, you've put so much incredible music, but do you think that maybe you had so much more to offer that you didn't offer to the world because you were doing it maybe as like just a side thing or something that only came with time? Because I'm very, very torn by this. Do I stop doing the things that I do during the day? Do I stop, as a nurse practitioner and just delve straight completely into the music all the time? Or do I stick to my gut feeling where I feel like it complements each other and it's what makes the music special for me?
So this is like the third question tonight that I've never heard before in my life. Nobody ever asked me this. So these
Women
are
ask the right
challenges.
questions.
I really have to sit and think about it. First of all, if you were to stop, let me just ask you a quick question. If you were to stop working, would your family still have parnasa? I mean, your husband works, or do you have other means of income? In other words, I certainly wouldn't want to recommend for you to stop working as a nurse practitioner if that is a necessary income for your family. I mean, that has to take priority, right?
Yeah, Baruch Hashem. Yeah, Baruch Hashem.
You're saying that's not an issue. You would be able to leave that behind or cut it down. And and your family wouldn't suffer because of it, you're saying.
I would, and I've cut it down a lot over the years, but I've never cut it down completely to the point where I'm not doing it at all, because I always felt like it's something that makes me better as a performer. But in the recent,
so first of all, a nurse practitioner, that's not easy. That's like, you're 3/4 of a doctor. So you've got, obviously you're giving people a tremendous blessing by helping them and treating them and taking care of them. I'm sure that gives you a lot of satisfaction as well. Besides, besides the satisfaction you might get from music, but I'm sure that your vocation is something that you feel is important in and of itself. Forget about the music, right? So why would you want to give that up? I mean, that a musical career, God bless you, it's great, and you might have, again, I've not heard your music, and you might have something to offer to Klal Yisrael that is far beyond anything you can give. But I would think, just superficially, that you would want to keep a connection to the.
It's the question I have for you, because if you do you feel that if you weren't occupied with, if you didn't need to provide the parnasa and you
I don't think I could give music any more than I gave. I really don't think. I think even if I wasn't working, I don't know if I look back at my career and I say, I think I gave it my all. I think I did as much as I could. Maybe it's because of that perspective. Maybe if I was sitting around and I had more time, maybe I would have done more. Maybe there would have been more songs, but I'm so grateful for what I've been able to do. I really don't think in terms of what I've missed. I really don't. I think that I feel that I did a lot. I worked hard. I'm still working hard. I'm working less now. I'm getting on in age, and I've certainly pulled back from my day job. So I have more time for music and writing and things like that, which I'm grateful for. But no, I would think really long and hard before I would step away from something as possibly gratifying as helping people, medically and with their, that's something that you'll get better at it as time goes on. You'll become more proficient at it. But whatever you do, give your all. Whatever it is, that one song.
No, 100%. It's just it's a common comment that like people ask me. I think people ask Shane the same question, like, why do you teach if you can put so much more into music and you have so much more to offer? And Bracha, why are you a nurse practitioner when you could be teaching students all day? And I think that, and it's sometimes it's like, yeah, I could be teaching an additional 15 students in the days that I work. And it it would be this, financially it would be equivalent or more, but it's not about that. I appreciate the answer of you saying that you gave all you can through music. I think
I
that
feel like I did. And also being out there is being out there in the world, interacting with people, interacting with children in a classroom or with your patients, the life experiences, seeing more people, it's gonna affect your music. It'll bring you perspectives and ideas, and if you sit at home all day with a guitar or a piano and don't meet anybody, where are you gonna get those life experiences that you're gonna write about?
right.
So
I very much appreciate that.
I think that it works that way. And
Thank you.
Best of luck. Best of luck.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Bracha. Okay, it's 6:30 in the morning here, and I have a child standing by the door, waiting for breakfast. So I'm going to wrap up the Zoom. I think I just muted you by mistake, so you might just unmute yourself quickly. Yeah. I just want to say, first of all, thank you for just saying really. Yes. I had
very interesting. I enjoyed it. A lot as well. The questions were great, and very relaxed atmosphere. So it's really no big deal. It's a pleasure.
All right, same time next week. I had a friend actually message me. How did you get Abie Rotenberg to join the Zoom? How much are you paying him? I said, you don't understand. When you're passionate about music, it's a joy to speak about it and to share.
As long as I don't have to sing.
As long as you don't have to sing, and you don't even have to leave your beautiful library. So what could be better than that? So thank you very much. We're looking forward to your material, your new album. We thank
Please look for it, and hopefully you'll appreciate it. And we'll do this again after that album comes out. So we can talk about those songs, all right? Okay.
Thank you everyone for joining, and Kosher and Freilich Pesach.
Pesach to everybody.
All right. Take care, everybody. Good night. Thank you so much.